We are moving into the problem solving and data analysis section of the SAT content. So today we're going to talk about ratios and rates and proportions and percents. So they're all fairly well related. A lot of the times you're just looking at a different form of writing the same number or expression. So when we talk about ratios or proportions, they can be written in several different forms and they're all equivalent. So they might say something on the SATs like a 7:2 ratio. Well, that's the same as writing it with the colon in between or as a fraction of 7/2. You can reduce in any of those forms. So maybe a better example would be like we have maybe a 15:3 ratio. We can reduce that by taking out a factor of 3 and saying this is the same as 5:1. Or if we had 15:3 this way, we can write it as 5:1. Or if we had 15/3 this way, we could write it as 5/1. And then they can all be written as a decimal or a percent. So we could also express that as 5, or we could express it as 500% in this case, just in terms of reducing all of those forms and then rewriting. So here is an example. It says the ratio of the number of math tests that the student passed to the number he failed was 7:3. So the order is important because this is the pass to fail ratio. So for every 10 tests that he took, he passed 7 and he failed 3 of them. If you switched it, then it would tell you the opposite. So we just want to make sure that we pay attention to the order of pass to fail is the same as pass to fail this way. So in terms of what percent he passed, well, this tells us how many he passed, how many he failed. So the total is the 7 plus 3 or 10. So to find the percent that he passed 7 out of every 10, which is a 70% pass rate. Here it says if 45% of students at a college are male, what's the ratio of female or male to female students? So if 45% are male, that tells us 55% are female. So the ratio of male to female would be male first to female. And then that can be reduced. So if this was maybe your solution on the SATs and you didn't see it, if we take a factor of 5 out of both of those, that would reduce to 9/11. Or it could be written as 9/11 this way, or 9 out of 11 this way. You always do want to pay attention to units on the SATs because sometimes if the problem switches up units, that will change the way you calculate your final answer. So here it tells us 3 apples cost 50 cents. We want to know how many we can buy for $20. So there are a couple of ways that we can go about this, but because our final answer is in dollars, we can maybe say, okay, if 3 apples are 50 cents, how many apples can we get for $1? We can get 6 apples for $1. So then we're looking at how many we can buy for $20. So if we can get 6 for $1, we can multiply 6 times 20. That tells us we can get 120 apples for $20. And you also could have thought of it the same way, like if we would have maybe doubled this and we would have said, okay, $20, well, that's 40 50-cent groupings. And then we could take that 40 groups of 3 apples to still get 120 apples. So just another way of thinking about the same problem. Okay, so when you solve percent problems always tend to throw students for a loop, I think just because of the language of percents and how we can express something as a fraction or a decimal or percent. But this is a general rule that the SATs give you. It's not given on the SATs, but if you know this, then you can pretty much solve any percent problems. So the is what would go in the numerator, and the of goes in the denominator, and that's equal to a certain percent out of 100. So all of these three columns here are giving you very similar statements, but the is and the of and the percents are different. So here we're looking for what is 45% of 200. Well, the is what we're trying to figure out. The of is the 200. And then the percent is 45 over 100. And then you're just going to go ahead and you can cross multiply to solve. So if you did that, I'm going to turn this is into an x just so that it's a variable. So it would be 100x equals 45 times 200, which is 9,000. And then I divide by 100 to get x equals 90. Here, same idea. It's just the is and the ofs and everything are kind of mixed up. You're missing different things. So we have the 90 is, so we have the is. The of is what we're trying to find. 90 is 45% of what number? So the of is the unknown. Again, we could cross multiply to solve, and that of is going to be equal to 200. And finally, over here, 90 is what percent of 200? Well, maybe you're looking at this and you could just say like, okay, 90 over 200 is equal to 0.45, which would be 45%. And that would be fine. But if we want to set it up with the same model, you would get the same thing. 90 over 200 equals the percent, which we're trying to find, over 100. And then when you would cross multiply to solve, you'd still get the percent to be 45%. Percent increase and percent decrease. You just want to make sure you actually are thinking about what's happening. So the percent increase is the actual amount of increase relative to the original amount. So how much did something go up divided by the original amount? And then we can multiply by 100 to turn it back into a percent. So here it says a DVD player rises in price from $80 to $100. What's the percent increase? So the amount increase from 80 to 100 is $20. That's our actual increase relative to the original amount. So the original amount was $80, and then we multiply by 100 to turn it back into a percent. So here we've got 20 over 80. So it's going to be a fourth, or 0.25. Times 100. That means that's not dollars, 25% increase. Percent decrease works in the same way. So it's the amount decrease relative to the original amount times 100. So here we're looking at the same numbers. You have a DVD player that's on sale for 80 that's marked down from 100. So the difference between those, the actual decrease, is still $20. When we look at the percent decrease, it's not going to be 25% because it's relative to that original amount. So the amount decreases 20, but the original amount was 100. So it's going to be a 20% decrease. Okay, so we're going to skip these ones on the study guide. I didn't provide that for you. But you guys are going to work on ratios, rates, and proportions, and percents on Khan Academy.